Hello everybody, it is a beautiful Saturday afternoon and I thought that I should make a video about a game that I've been playing quite a bit of lately, and that is Clash Royale. I wanted to make a video that was sort of a beginner's guide to progression in Clash Royale. I think there's a decent number of videos out there covering gameplay elements and that are tailored both for intermediate and beginner players, and I wanted to provide something that tackled the sort of slightly less gameplay aspect of the game, which is the progression system. Because while Clash Royale has a very interesting concept and occupies a very interesting sort of point in the design space for collectible card games, it is very much a pay-to-win game. And if you're someone who likes playing games for free, because why not? Games like Hearthstone and many others are free. Why would you waste your time with a game that costs money? If you're that type of guy, and I am, you might want to know, well, what is the best way to climb as quickly as possible in this game as a free-to-play player? And that's what this video is going to be about. I haven't seen a lot of videos on YouTube about this, and I've been playing the game for a couple months, and I feel like this could be a big help to a lot of beginners out there. So, first off, what do I like about Clash Royale? If you haven't played Clash Royale before and this is your sort of first exposure to it, what I really like about Clash Royale is it occupies a very interesting point in sort of the design space that developers are always working around, right? It's an interesting iteration where one of the problems with a game like Magic the Gathering, playing it in an online setting, is that it becomes very clunky, the interface, right? You constantly have to wait for your opponent's action, right, to get priority, to see if their spells resolve, so on and so forth. And that is not something people typically enjoy. It has a very bad game flow, really, to it. Games that have been like Hearthstone, which are still turn-based as Magic the Gathering, but don't allow for actions to be taken during your opponent's turn, are a little bit smoother in terms of that experience. This goes the whole hog and creates a game where you both take your turns in real time. And so as you see, the games are very fast-paced. They don't only take a few minutes, really, for over the course of the entire game. And they're very action-packed because it's in real time. And so I like that sort of, I guess, innovation, really, because I don't know of many other games, period, in all of collectible card games that feature this sort of real-time element. In any case, really like Clash Royale and wanted to provide something of a guide to progressing in Clash Royale. So if you're somebody who's just started off in Clash Royale, what do you need to know about how to climb as quickly as possible? What is the system of Clash Royale? And as you can see here, I've been having a lot of success with this Lava Loon deck that I've been running. How does it work? What do you do to climb, and what are the ways that you maximize that climb? Well, first off, there's a bunch of chests for you to open. Free chests, crown chests, chests that you unlock. This is a super magical chest, which I'll open sort of at the end of the video. There's also some donation and request things going on. There are challenges. I'll talk about those more in a bit. But the primary way that you're going to progress in Clash Royale is by opening chests like these, right? So a free chest is a chest that's opened. One of them is provided to you every 4 hours, and it contains some gold and some cards. So here I got 93 gold. I got a rare card, Barbarian Hut, and I got 11 Royal Giants. Royal Giant being one of the cards. And the way that it works is you can take your cards that you have and you can level them up, right? So here I have a Mortar Cycle deck. I could take this card, the Zap, for example, and I could upgrade it. And this is a spell. As a spell, it'll deal 12 more damage and deal 5 more damage to towers if I upgrade this, right? Which will cost me 2,000 gold. If I upgrade, say, this Knight, notice that this Knight is a higher level than the Zap, so the upgrade cost has gone up from 2,000 to 4,000, right? If I upgrade this Knight, I'm getting, roughly speaking, a 10% increase in hit points, roughly a 10% increase in damage per second, and a 10% increase in just damage, the damage per swing, right? Every time you level up a card, which costs you a certain number of cards, here 400 out of the 443 Knights that I have, and some amount of gold, you're going to get roughly a 10% increase in the stats of the card, right? In terms of the hit points that it has and the damage it does per swing. And so you get into this situation where it's almost very blatantly pay to win, where if you're playing very well, you'll start going up against opponents who just have higher level cards than you. They might even have the same deck as you, but if all their cards are 3 levels higher than yours, which is often the case for me, or it used to be often the case, now they're closer to like 1 or 2 levels higher than me, you're just down in terms of stats, right? This card costs 3 mana, or elixir, is the sort of the term used by Clash Royale. This costs about 3 mana, or about 3 mana. It costs exactly 3 mana to play. And if your opponent plays the same card, but their card has 3 levels on you, it might just have a third more hit points, a third more attack, and beat your unit straight up. It's as if you're playing Hearthstone, and you play a Chillwind Yeti, a 4/5 for 4 mana. Your opponent plays their own Chillwind Yeti, but he's a 5/7 for 4 mana, right? No disadvantages, just pure straight advantage granted to the player who had more gold, more cards, more whatever. In addition to that, a lot of the more interesting cards, a lot of the ones that create sort of the win condition for a lot of decks, are legendary cards. So for example, here's my Lava Hound. This guy is probably one of the best legendaries you can open if you're a free-to-play player. I'll get a little bit into that a little bit in a sec, but he forms sort of the basis, he or she, I don't know, forms the basis of a Lava Loon type strategy, right? Where you have this really difficult to kill air tank, and then you put a balloon, which is a very kind of fragile but high damage per second card, right? It does 726 damage per swing, whereas the Lava Hound is dealing 49 per swing. You put a fragile air unit behind, a fragile glass cannon air unit behind this very tanky air tank, and that's your primary win condition. But notice that this card, indicated by the special border, is a legendary. These cards in purple are epics. This card in orange is a rare, and these cards with effectively no, or like basically no border, are commons, right? And so not only do you have the case where people just play your same cards but higher levels against you, they'll also have more access to unique and powerful cards like the Lava Hound, for example. And so you start running into problems, and these problems happen very early on. And I think one of the first things you want to understand about Clash Royale is how the levels interact with one another. So you start off all the way down in... Well, I guess technically you start off in the training camp, right? Where this is sort of the tutorial missions are. And what they do is they give you a starting deck. This deck has arrows, bomber, archers, knight, fireball, mini P.E.K.K.A., musketeer, and giant. It's basically a giant beatdown deck. And the way that you roughly want to play it is you want to take your giant, you want to place it behind your king tower, and then as it slowly marches its way towards your opponent's side of the field, you're going to deploy things like bomber or musketeer or archers behind it, and it's going to serve as the tank that absorbs all the blows, while your more glass cannon fragile units behind it are dishing out the damage. Pretty standard. Beatdown is one of the big archetypes in Clash Royale. This is sort of a standard look at a giant beatdown deck. Very simple, plays very easily. But one of the things you're going to note is that you've got 4 commons and you've got 4 rares, and at the end of the training camp, you'll be given a chest that randomly contains either Prince, Baby Dragon, Skeleton Army, or Witch, which are epics, right? So once you've completed the tutorial, you'll have 4 commons, 4 rares, an epic, and a smattering of some other things, right? Maybe enough cards to level up one of these commons, maybe a rare, right? And the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to take whatever epic you opened and replace one of your commons with it. There's no exception, doesn't matter what epic you opened. What epic you open might determine which of these you want to replace, but the short of it is you're always going to want to put this epic in your deck. And the reason for that is that the way that the game is balanced is around a system wherein a legendary, a level 1 legendary, is the equivalent of a level 4 epic. In terms of stats and how powerful the card is, that's the way the cards are balanced. A level 4 epic is expected to be roughly on par with a level 1 legendary. Similarly, a level 1 epic is expected to be on par with roughly a level 4 rare. And a level 1 rare is expected to be on par with a level 3 common, right? So there's a 2-level difference between every common and rare, a 3-level difference between every rare and legendary, and a 3-level difference between every, 3-level difference between a rare and an epic, and a 3-level difference between an epic and a legendary. So the epic that you open is only going to be level 1, but since all of your other cards are going to be level 1, maybe you get to level them up and they're level 2, this card is, whichever one of these it is going to be just at least 2 levels higher than any other card in your deck. And you're probably going to be replacing, if you replace a level 1 common with your level 6, effectively, epic, right? It's a level 1 epic, but it's the equivalent of a level 6 common. You've moved up 5 levels. This card is just much better than whatever card you replaced it with. Doesn't matter. The raw power level of the card, doesn't matter what the changes to the composition, the raw power level of the card is going to push you further to victory. And so as you climb, more cards are unlocked. And typically what you're going to want to do is play with whatever your highest level cards are, right? Level up cards that you like playing with and cards that you get the cards for. But play with basically just your highest level cards. So if you climb up to Bone Pit and you unlock Giant Skeleton is a great replacement for Giant. They basically serve the same role. The Giant Skeleton costs 1 elixir more, has a little bit lower stats, but has this added bonus of when it dies, it creates an explosion in a radius around it. That's pretty nice. But the main reason why you want to sub him in is because he's going to be a level 6. And this Giant, unless you've been able to level up this Giant all the way to level 4, which is a sort of a hard thing to do so early on in the game, this Giant just is going to have worse stats than this Giant Skeleton, even though if they were of equivalent levels, it would be the other way around, right? Because the Giant Skeleton is having sort of all these other things added on to it that you're paying a price for in the cost. Likewise, if you get some sort of splash card like a Baby Dragon or a Witch, you probably want to replace your Bomber with it. They serve a similar role. You might want to replace, say, Knight with Prince, right? You might want to replace, well, Skarmy will replace pretty much any of these. It's just a really good card against giant beatdown plans in general. It's a good defensive card, I should say. And so on and so forth. There's always going to be something that you basically want to replace once you get an epic. And you might end up, after a while, just with a deck that's basically 7 epics and a rare. And you haven't leveled up any of your cards. But you'll still be at maybe even a level advantage over some of your opponents because the epics are all equivalent to level 6. And so one of the first things you're going to want to do is make sure you understand how the levels work in the game and play with whatever your most powerful cards are. If there's a clear level difference, right, you'd rather play with a card that's 2 levels higher, even if it changes the deck composition to make it worse, right? In addition to that, there is a shop. Here I've already bought 2 copies each of this Ice Spirit and this Dark Goblin, but this is the typical range of things that will be offered in the card shop, and every 24 hours it will reset. You'll be offered a common, a rare, and an epic, right? Or maybe 2 commons and a rare. It'll vary, right? And on Sundays you'll actually have 6 cards to choose from. Your first common is going to cost you 2 gold. The next one is going to cost you 4 gold. One after that is 6 gold, and so on and so forth. I've already bought 2 commons from the shop, which is why this is 6 gold. Similar for the rares. They start off at 20 gold, then 40 gold, then 60 gold, and the epics start off at 1,000 gold. When you're first starting off, to make your deck stronger, you probably want to buy from the shop almost any epic that you don't have. Rage probably being an exception. This just isn't a very useful card. Wouldn't really work with the strategy that you have of kind of playing overleveled cards anyways, but any troop that you have in here that you don't have, right? If it's a giant skeleton, it's a witch, it's a baby dragon, you're probably correct to spend 1,000 gold, which is going to be a lot of gold for you early on, but that's going to get you to climb faster. And climbing faster is going to be the name of the game when it comes to climbing in Clash Royale and progressing in Clash Royale, because when you first start off, you start off in Goblin Stadium. The trophy requirement for Goblin Stadium is 0 or more trophies. So, you know, this is where you're starting off at. Once you've completed the training camp and the tutorial missions, and they've given you the basic info on how to play, you start off in Goblin Stadium. You won't be here for long if you kind of understand how to play, for two reasons. The first is you're going up against a lot of people who don't know how to play at all. And if you have any idea of how to play the game, literally just do what I said, put the giant in the back, and then as it makes its way down towards your opponent, play troops behind it. You'll probably stomp anyone that you run across and quickly make your way out of Goblin Stadium. Because every time you win, you're going to be given a certain number of trophies. And this is the second reason why you're not going to be in Goblin Stadium for long. At this low level, you're given a lot more trophies per win than you're given for a loss, right? So just naturally, even if you're only winning half your games, you're going to climb up pretty quickly. Bone Pit, the trophy requirement is 400 or more. And once you get to, say, 400 trophies, as long as you don't drop down below 350 trophies, you're going to maintain this Arena 2 status. And all of the chests that you open from Arena 2 are going to have these cards potentially in them, right? These are the cards that you unlock at Arena 2. And they're also going to have more cards and more gold in them, right? And it's to the extent that going from Goblin Stadium to Arena 2, Arena 3, to going to Pekka's Playhouse, Arena 4, this doubles the amount of cards and gold that you get out of every chest that you open. And if you go from Arena 4 all the way up to where I am right now, which is Hog Mountain, that will double again all of the rewards that you get from all of your chests. Every Arena 10 chest that you open is going to have pretty much twice as much as every Arena 4 chest, which in turn is going to have twice as much as any Arena 1 chest. So climbing quickly, winning games, is going to be very important. Now, what I said earlier about how at these low levels they give you more trophies per win than they take away for a loss, that's going to stop being true at around Royal Arena. So a 50% win rate is only going to get you to about Royal Arena. And after that, they're going to penalize you as many trophies as you would normally win for each win and loss. So from there, you do need to start netting yourself some wins to climb. But climbing as quickly as possible is going to give you higher income, and it's also going to unlock some other things. But before that, let me also talk about your level. So I'm a level 9 player, and your level changes the strength of your towers. The level on your cards changes the strength of your cards, right? Increasing them by 10% each go around. It's a little bit more complicated the way that these tower levels work. They don't increase by 10% every level until you reach around, I think, level 8. Going from level 8 to 9 will increase the damage and hit points of your towers by 10%. But before that, it only gets you about plus 8%, 7%? I don't quite remember. The point of this, though, is that it makes defensive play earlier on better because the towers are relatively more stronger than they will be later in the game. By the time you reach level 8, now your towers are leveling up at the same rate as your cards, and that's kind of where that maximum difference is capped. But yeah, that's something to keep track of. Your level is different from your arena, right? Your arena, Hog Mountain, for example, is determined by your trophies. You could be a level 1 player and be in Hog Mountain, theoretically, right? You would probably need to be running all legendary cards because, well, I'll talk about how you level up in a bit, but you could run level 1 legendary cards. They'd all be level 9 common equivalent, and you could probably make it at Hog Mountain. But it's a different thing, right, is what I want to stress. Your levels and your arena are different concepts. The way that you level up your king towers and kind of climb in that regard is by, well, one, completing things like achievements. So if we go to the achievements here, joining a clan, donating cards, reaching certain arenas, they give you experience and gems, which is another sort of currency in the game. This is the premium currency for this freemium game. This experience, right, I'd need 10,000 more, or at this point I need, what, 6285 more experience to reach level 10, right? And this experience requirement will go up and up per level, right? So the next one will probably be 20,000 experience that I would need. Leveling up your cards, finishing achievements, things of this sort, will grant you experience, right? So if I took these goblins, level 6 goblins, and I said I want to upgrade them to level 7, it would give me 50 experience, right? It would cost me 1,000 gold. I would consume 100 copies of this card, but it'd give me 50 experience, and that would help level me up. Notice that I have, well, 37 exactly. I have 37 cards that I have not leveled up. In fact, many of them I could level up multiple times. And the reason why I haven't is because gold is very much the limiting factor in how quickly you can progress your cards. I would not have enough gold to level up all the cards that I have here. And there's a lot of other things that I want to be able to use my gold for besides leveling up cards. So it's important that you be very parsimonious in terms of what you level up. Here I have most everything leveled up to roughly level 5 equivalent. Some things I've leveled up higher, even though I don't really play them very much because I expect to play them in the future. But I don't really expect to be playing, say, Tesla Tower. And so the reason I upgraded it to level 5 was because I just wanted to get as cheaply as possible to a higher level as quickly as possible. Now that I'm kind of at a reasonable level, I'm probably not going to be leveling up these cards anymore just because of the gold cost. I'm not willing to spend 400 gold for a card that I'm not going to use or play. Leveling up your level is also very important. There are two key thresholds that you want to reach as quickly as possible. The first one is level 3. Level 3 is the point where you can join a clan. And joining a clan is going to be a very big deal because it gives you a big influx of resources. So if I click on my clan tab here, notice there are people requesting cards. Here's a clanmate requesting musketeers. I'm requesting knights. Another clanmate requesting minions. It does not cost you anything to request these cards. It's on a 7-hour window. You can request every 7 hours. And the number of cards that you can request depends on what your arena level is. So because I'm arena level 10, I can request up to 40 of a common card, right? Brian Myers is also level 10, or arena 10. And so he can, sorry, arena 10, not level 10. Want to make that clear. He is arena 10, and so he can request up to 4 rares, Musketeer being a rare. Cheesecake here is not arena 10. He's probably like arena 9 or 8. And so he can only request 30 cards. But it doesn't cost you anything to request these cards. And when you donate cards to someone, you're given gold in return. For every common that you donate, you're going to be given 5 gold. For every rare that you donate, you're going to be given 50 gold. So if we go back to the shop here, there's a reason why I buy the first 2 copies of every common and rare, because those are the ones that are cheaper than what I would get by donating those cards. You turn a profit on the first 2 commons and rares you buy from the shop. And you might be asking yourself the question, well, what if the commons and rares in the shop aren't cards that people are going to play, right? What if no one's going to request them from me? What if I'm not going to use them in a deck? Should I still buy them, right? And the answer is yes, because the way that the distribution of cards that you receive is determined is pseudo-random. The number of ice spirits you have, for example, is going to determine how likely it is that you get ice spirits in your next chest. If you have relatively much fewer ice spirits than you do all the other commons, then you're going to have a much higher chance of opening ice spirit. Same thing for rares. Doesn't hold true for epics or legendaries, but for commons and rares, there is this sort of auto-balancing feature that's going on. So whenever you buy a common or a rare from the shop, really, over the course of a few weeks, this auto-balancing sort of feature, the pseudo-random nature of the chest, is going to more or less even out the cards that you have. And so you don't need to worry too much about what cards you're giving away or requesting. But you do want to make use of this as often as possible, right? Because this is a great source of gold, being able to turn your cards into gold. It helps you turn a profit once you've started buying cards from the shop. And you're just getting every 7 hours, maybe more realistically every 8 hours if you're checking, say, 3 times a day. Once before you go to sleep, once when you wake up, once in the midday. You'll request about 3 times a day. That's giving me, in this case, 120 commons a day, right? And we saw from the free chest that I opened, I got roughly, 11 Royal Giants, 11 commons, 1 rare, and maybe 100 gold. This is a pretty good chunk of change here that you're getting from requesting cards. It also unlocks things like the clan chest, right? So every weekend there's going to be some sort of collective effort that you can put in towards this chest, right? So if I look at chest progress, everyone's contributing some number of crowns to the chest. A crown, you get a crown every time you take a tower in one of your match-made games. So since this clan chest has started going, I've earned 15 crowns. I've gotten 15 towers from my opponents, taking them in games. And the more crowns your whole clan has at the end, the higher level this clan chest will be. And when you open this clan chest at one day, 17 hours from now, the higher level it is, the more cards and gold and stuff that you get. So joining a clan has a lot of really positive impacts. You don't even need to know these people. I don't know any of these people in real life. I simply joined a clan. They'll suggest clans for you, even active clans with lots of people who are going to be requesting cards and fulfilling requests that you submit, right? And this will give you the opportunity to donate as many cards as you can every day and request as many cards as you can and get access to the clan chests and just increase your income by a lot. So hitting level 3 is a really important milestone because it gives you just a lot more passive income. You don't even need to be playing the game to take advantage of a lot of this. You do need to contribute 1 crown at least to get the clan chest, but the donating and requesting, you don't need to be an active player. You could just be logging in once every 8 hours to, you know, click on your free chests and open up them, and you'd be good to go. So hitting level 3 is very important. Hitting level 8 is the next big milestone in terms of levels, and after that the levels don't really matter too much anymore, because at level 8 you unlock tournaments and challenges. And for one, you can go and you can search for tournaments, and there are a number of free tournaments that are held, and you can join them, and if you do well in the tournaments, you can win some cards and gold and whatnot. But the really big advantage is things like these special events. They'll typically hold one of these special events once every, say, 2 weeks, and you're given 1 free entry at the start, and there is a huge amount of gold and cards to be earned here, right? So if I look at this, it is a draft challenge, so you're going to be drafting your deck against your opponent. It's double elixir, which means you're going to be constantly in this double elixir mode. Your rate of mana production is going to be double for the entire game, where normally it's only double for the last period of the game, the last third of the game roughly. You're given a free entry. Your first one is free. Everything after that is going to cost either 10 or 100 gems, depending upon which type of challenge it is. And as you can see, if I went 9 wins in this double elixir draft challenge, I'd win the top prize of 5,750 gold, 265 cards. Of those 265 cards, at least 2 of them are going to be epics and 26 of them are going to be rares. I'd also earn all of these one-time rewards, right? So I'd earn 24,000 gold plus 12,000 gold plus 6,000 gold plus 4,500 gold, right? I'd be sitting there and I'd earn, what? This is around like, what, 50k gold at least, plus a bunch of cards? This is a lot of gold. And if every 2 weeks I'm getting myself, say, 50k gold, if I'm doing really well in these challenges, that's a huge source of income. Even if you only win, say, you go 3 wins, 3 losses, right? You're still getting 4,500 gold from the one-time rewards, and you're getting, I don't know, probably like 1,200 gold and 30 cards, something around there. I don't know what the exact prize structure is, but the point is, you get to join these for free. And so hitting level 8 is very important. Because it opens up the possibility to get these free entries into challenges, and that is a lot of gold that you can have. So that's a really big deal as well. So once you've understood the level system, and you understand how to build the most powerful deck just purely on the numbers, right? To understand that your level 3 common is not going to be a better card or a better include in your deck than your level 1 epic. Ooh, I just received 6 knights. Once you understand that, and you can build sort of the most powerful decks that you can, you need to understand, as you climb, a little bit more about the deck archetypes that are available to you and how they play up or play down against your opponents. So one of the things you're very quickly going to run into is you're going to run into opponents that have much higher level cards than you. They're going to have higher level king towers, right? They're going to have higher level cards, and it's starting to be a slog in terms of how you're going to win, right? This happens very early on, right from the get-go. You know, if you win your first 2 or 3 games, suddenly you're going to be facing down a lot of opponents who just have much higher level cards than you, right? They'll be running a deck with 4 epics in it. You'll be running a deck with 1 epic in it. They'll have all these level 6 cards. You'll have a bunch of level 2, level 3 cards, and maybe 1 level 6 card, and it's going to be a challenge to win. So typically in Clash Royale, the game is viewed as having 3 distinct archetypes. Beatdown, Siege, and Control. And the way that these archetypes work is that Beatdown is more or less the starter deck that they give you in Clash Royale, right? Beatdown is, as I said, you play your big tanky guy, and as he plods his way down towards your opponent's side of the arena, you put glass cannon troops, support troops behind him, and you create this big push that your opponent has to deal with. And you try and take a tower that way, right? The disadvantage of this archetype, even though it gets to play a lot of very efficient creatures, a lot of efficient troops, Giant is just a very, very tanky guy, very hard to bring down. The disadvantage of it is that you're very often playing on your opponent's side of the field, where they have towers shooting at your units. And if their towers are very strong because they're very high level, and if your units are relatively weak because they're underleveled, you're going to have some trouble getting a win, right? Because that defender's advantage is not something you're going to be able to overcome when you're already faced with a situation in which you're trying to overcome a lot of level differences as well. It also isn't a playstyle that allows you to really outplay your opponent in a very significant way, because you have to invest a certain amount into creating this push without knowing how your opponent is going to defend. And once your opponent chooses how they're going to defend, you have very limited resources with which to answer their response, right? You also have limited means, even if you had all the elixir, all the mana in the world to answer what they try to respond to your push with. You have to play your cards on your side of the arena, so your reinforcements to your push are always going to arrive a little bit after whatever your opponent does. So the beatdown archetype doesn't really allow for a lot of the outplay that a control or a siege archetype would, and it plays it at a disadvantage that is particularly important when you're down levels, because your stats matter. Your stats matter very much. If your giant isn't very tanky, he goes down quickly, and then your glass cannon troops get mopped up, and your push doesn't work. And you might just be in a situation where your deck basically cannot win, right? Because you just don't have enough stats, enough raw power to force through this sort of beatdown strategy. So unless you get lucky, as I have, with what cards drop for you, you probably want to start moving away from the beatdown strategy into something more like Siege or Control. And Control is one of the ones that a lot of people move into, because fairly early on you unlock one of the best cards for a Control deck. At Pekka's Playhouse, you unlock the Hog Rider. And let me talk a little bit about Siege first, because Siege is sort of a very underplayed archetype. I think it's quite strong, and it does offer a lot of outplay potential. It's just a little bit limited for a free-to-play player because of when the cards unlock and the nature of the cards sometimes. So, for example, the first siege weapon that you unlock here, yep, this is the first, there's only 2 of them actually, is the crossbow in Arena 3. The crossbow has a range of 11.5, which means you can place it on your side of the arena and it can shoot towers on the other side of the arena. And so the idea of a siege archetype is not to play on your opponent's side of the field. It's to force your opponent to come to your side of the field and stop you from taking their towers, right? You'll play down this Expo, and then you get to play reactively. Whatever your opponent does to try and attack into this Expo, you're going to get to react to that. And if your reactions are better than their attacks, then you can outskill them and win the game without ever having to care about how much damage their towers do, right? And because you're able to pick counter units to whatever units they're trying to attack with, the stats of those units aren't going to matter that much. So siege archetypes using something like the Expo are very powerful in terms of being able to play against players of much higher level. The disadvantage of a siege archetype is that it gets countered by a beatdown archetype. A beatdown archetype already wants and has the tools to play on the opponent's side of the arena, right? It wants to play things like giants and push into the opponent's side of the arena. If you're going to challenge them, hey, I want you to play on my side of the arena, they're usually able to answer that challenge. And beatdown decks are very popular, and so you might struggle with a siege archetype. The other big problem, of course, is that this Expo is of epic rarity, and it's going to be very difficult to level up your epic cards compared to your commons and your rares as you go on. Typically, the common cards are the easiest ones to level. the rares next easiest, and then epics and legendaries after that. So having a win condition, this is a very key card in your siege deck. It does have to be a high level for you to be able to do damage and win. You need very much this card to have levels, and it's going to be hard to get the required number of epic cards needed to upgrade this. So that's one problem you have. The other problem is that it's not until all the way in Arena 6, Builder's Workshop, that you unlock the other siege weapon, Mortar. Again, Mortar, it's a building, so you just place it and it doesn't move, right? It has a range of 11.5. This is the other siege unit that you can use to hit your opponent's towers from your side of the map. It's going to be easier to level up this card, but you're already in Arena 6 when you unlock this. So it's going to take you a while to get the required number of mortars to get this card high enough level to be able to really compete with it. But it is very much a viable strategy here. So the other type of archetype is control. And the way that control works is you usually play a very defensive game, and you try and counter whatever your opponent does, and you try and counter whatever your opponent does using less mana, less elixir than what your opponent used to make the attack, right? So you want to have a lot of counter units, a lot of defensive units in your deck to be able to outplay your opponent, right? And then you're going to have one or two cards which are not going to just take your opponent's tower outright. You're not just going to play this card and it's by itself going the moment you played it, 10 seconds later it takes the tower. That's not going to happen. This isn't a beatdown deck, but it's going to chip away at your opponent's tower's health, right? It's just going to get in a few hits and that'll be it, right? A few hits and then go back to defense. A few hits, go back to defense. And the plan is you keep on making these positive elixir trades. You keep on trading. They attacked with 4 elixir. I defended it with 2. They attacked with 8 elixir. I defended it with 5. And those little advantages that you accrue through smart defense, you invest back into, okay, and now I play this card and it gets a little bit of damage on my opponent's tower. Until you defend, they don't get any damage on your tower, and at the end of the game, you've whittled down their tower enough to win you the game. So you do play on your opponent's side of the map. That's when you send those units in, but you're still playing a very defensive game like the siege archetype is. It's just instead of having to defend a siege weapon, right, you are instead using some proxy unit, something that you can just deploy on your opponent's side of the map, or can get to your opponent's side of the map very quickly, right, to do your damage, right? You want just some guaranteed way of dealing damage, and you repeat that. So in some ways, you could just go whole hog, and you could say, well, whole hog is a funny expression because I'll talk to that in a bit. This card is called the Hog Rider. Anyways, you could just use something like a rocket, right? A rocket, even at level 1, does 280 damage to a tower, right? If you fire off enough rockets at your opponent's towers, you'll take down your tower. Or you'll take down their tower, right? You could just be doing that. Play defense, play defense, play defense. Every time you have 6 elixir, you fire off a rocket at your opponent's tower. Every time you win up 6 elixir against them, you use it to rocket at their tower, and eventually you grind them down. Or you could be using cards like Hog Rider. It only targets buildings, so it's going to run straight at your opponent's buildings. It's a very fast unit, and it does a pretty good amount of damage, and it's got a reasonable number of hit points, right? It's a fairly tanky guy, does a lot of damage, runs straight at buildings, runs at them very fast. And the goal is just to keep on playing this guy, get in a few hits, and if you get in enough hits, right, 150 damage a hit is a lot. Again, a whole rocket did 280 damage. Right? If you can get your Hog Rider to their tower and he does 2 hits, he's dealing 300 damage. Of course, this is at a lower level. This is the Hog Rider at level 7. Here he is at level 1, right? Still same story, right? If you can just chip away at your opponent's tower, you can do a lot of damage that way. The challenge of a control archetype is that besides the Hog Rider, there aren't actually a lot of cards that allow you to just play stuff on your opponent's side of the arena or do significant amounts of damage to your opponent's towers. Goblin Barrel is one of them. You can throw it anywhere in the arena, and it puts 3 goblins down, basically just 3 of these guys. This is a really good card. You'll often pair it with Hog Rider, but it's an epic, right? And so it's going to be difficult to level up this card for that reason. Likewise, a lot of the other legendary cards like Graveyard. This is a very good control card. You are basically over time spawning an entire skeleton army anywhere on the map. Or a card like the Miner. You can put it anywhere on the arena. All these sort of proxy cards, proxy troops, and sometimes heavy spells like rockets form the basis of a good control deck, along with a lot of really good defensive cards. But again, the one option you're really going to have to play a control game is going to come from the Hog Rider. Unlock them at Arena 4, and then start requesting them in your clan as much as possible if you want to play a Hog Rider controls type deck. Otherwise, you're probably looking to either get as many Expos as you can, or get as many Mortars as you can, right? Because your other win conditions are either going to be beatdown win conditions, which aren't going to play up very well, or they're going to be just things like the Miner, right? Which you're just not going to be able to either request at all from your clan or really get with any regular frequency from your chests. So, fastest progression possible. You want to climb in arenas as quickly as possible. Arena 10, Hog Mountain, is probably one of the best parts. This is kind of like the threshold where you're getting a lot of stuff, right? You're getting 4 times as much gold and cards per chest as you were in Arena 1. You have access to the maximum number of donations and requests from the clans. You're also have access to legendaries in the shop, right? So my current shop right now does not offer a legendary, but sometimes if you're Arena 10 or higher, they will offer legendaries for you to buy for 40k gold in the shop, and which is why I'm saving up around 40k gold to hopefully find a legendary that I like and buy it in the shop. And it's not terribly hard to reach it, but it does require a little bit of luck. So I've been playing for a couple months, roughly long enough to open or to have dropped a super magical chest, which is basically the best chest that you can get in the game. There's a rotation of chests, so they're all on like a set cycle. You get the super magical chest around 2 months in, depends upon how regularly you're unlocking chests. It takes time, of course, to unlock them. The cycle itself is around, I think, 3 months long, something around there. So in any case, I've been playing for a couple months, and I'm pretty solidly in Hog Mountain. The threshold for Hog Mountain is about 3k trophies, and I really haven't had much of a problem. I mean, as you can see in sort of I've just been winning a lot of games here. The way that I've been playing things right now, because the next arena level is at 4k, which is, or sorry, 3.8k, and then above that you have these challenger leagues. But because it's a full 600 trophies, plus a little bit, 616 trophies between where I am now and the next arena, I've really been focusing on playing and trying out other decks. And usually I'll play these other decks and they won't have very good levels. I won't have leveled up the cards like I have my current deck, and so I'll drop, but then I'll switch back to playing my Lava Hound deck, and I'll just climb. So part of the reason why I have such a long win streak in my game history is simply because the deck that I've been falling with is not the deck that I've been climbing with. But it is good to try and test out other decks. I say that luck is a factor here because luck is going to determine a lot of how easy it is for you to climb early on and then kind of sustain that climb later in the game. So my luck came in sort of 2 factors, and I've been pretty lucky with the way that things have gone. The first piece of luck that I had was that of the 4 epics that you can unlock at the start, Prince, Baby Dragon, Skeleton Army, and Witch, I unlocked Skeleton Army, which is probably not the best of these epics. I think the Witch would actually be better because she synergizes really well with a beatdown strategy. But the Skeleton Army is a very good counter card to a beatdown strategy, is what I want to emphasize. Playing a Skeleton Army around a giant will almost instantly evaporate that giant. These guys have gigantic damage per second. They're very, very glass cannony, though. One shot from pretty much anything will kill a skeleton. But having a level 6 answer to what is basically going to be the win condition that everybody is running early on in the game is very, very strong. And so ideally you want to open up one of these or maybe Witch early on. These epics aren't bad either, but Skeleton Army or Witch are probably the two best ones that you can open, and that helps a lot in climbing very quickly. The other thing is what you get from the shop. Ideally, from the shop, you want to be finding things like Witch, Baby Dragon Prince, Skeleton Army. Goblin Barrel and Lightning Bolt, or Lightning, I should say, are not as good. These spell cards are not as good. You really just want things that kind of support your beatdown strategy, which is usually troops that you're going to be placing behind your big tank. But if you can find things like Balloon or things like Giant Skeleton in your shop, those are going to be very powerful. I would even buy an Expo if I found it in the shop. I probably would not buy a Rage, but everything else, just getting one copy to have access to that level 6 card is going to be a really big deal. So your very first unlocks are going to be very important, right? They're going to determine a lot about how strong your deck is, because they just have they're either very good against a beatdown strategy or they're very good with a beatdown strategy, and that's sort of what everyone's going to be playing, yourself included, in these early levels. I was lucky in another way as well, which is that not only, and to go to my deck here, not only did I open Lava Hound as the first legendary that I ever opened, and I got it from just from some random chest. Also, once I hit 3K trophies, Lava Hound was the first legendary that I found in my shop. And so I was able to get it to level 2. And I found one more since then, so I was able to snap that up. And that's actually kind of part of the reason why I'm saving up this gold. I'm hoping to, maybe if I get this to level 3, I can continue with this deck all the way up to Legendary Arena, 3,800 trophies. But one of the things that's really nice about having a card like this, and notice that this card is effectively level 10. Right? A level 1 legendary is equivalent to a level 9 common. This is a level 2 legendary, making it equivalent to a level 10 common. All the rest of the stuff in my deck is lower level, right? My arrows are level 9. My minions are level 9. My goblin gang is level 9. Skeletons are level 8. This is equivalently to level 8. These cards are equivalent to level 8, right? I've got basically 4 level 8 cards, 3 level 9s, and a level 10. And one of the things you're going to want to do to climb is you want to request cards from your clan oftentimes that are the highest elixir cost that you can have, right? Because if you're spending, if I'm placing, 4 or 5 Lava Hounds in a match, that means I'm spending about 28 elixir on those cards. I could drop skeletons 28 times in a match and would only match the amount of elixir that I dropped on this Lava Hound, and I'm never going to play skeletons 28 times in a match. I just won't get around to skeletons that often, right? But I could play 4 Lava Hounds in a match pretty easily, right? This is the card that's going to be my win condition. So you want to request very expensive mana cost wise cards and level those up, because that effectively raises the average level of your deck more than requesting, say, a bunch of these 1 cost cards or something like this. So if I look at the decks that are kind of good as a free-to-play player, and I've kind of built 2 of them, here is a Mortar deck. Mortar's really nice because the Mortar is a common, right? You can request a lot of Mortars as well. It's going to be one of the most expensive cards of your deck, because part of the idea is to cycle back to your Mortar very quickly, right? You play a Mortar, you play a bunch of 1, 2 cost stuff, you get your Mortar back in hand, and you replay another Mortar, and you just constantly put on that Mortar pressure against your opponent. And they might have a few answers to the Mortar in their deck, but if you can get back to your Mortar before they can get back to their answers, you can outcycle them, and just eventually they won't have an answer, and the Mortar will take down their tower, right? This deck is great because it's only got 1 rare card in it. Everything else is common, right? And you do really well requesting a bunch of Mortars, because the Mortar is your most expensive common, right? Everything else is very cheap, right? If you get your Mortar very high level, you're just going to be, a lot of these cards you just play and you don't even care about their level. The whole point is to get back to your Mortar so you can play it again. You're just going to play again and again and again this Mortar and defend it with Knight, Archer, stuff like this. And so you have a very clear request strategy with a Mortar deck of just requesting the Mortar pretty much every time you can. The other thing you might request is rockets, because these rockets are sort of a way that you finish out the game, right? And again, some decks are the way that you win, because your Mortar won't work. You use the Mortar more as like a a defensive unit and you just keep cycling rockets to take down the tower, this is another option that you have. But mortar strategies are one that you can go for. Another one, and this is a very, very popular deck at the highest levels, is Three Musketeers. So here's a Three Musketeers deck. It's got 3 rares in it, and everything else is common, right? And what's great is if you request the win condition, the Musketeers a bunch, they cost 9 elixir. So if you can get these Musketeers to a very high level, and the level you want to kind of get them at is one where they survive a fireball from your opponent. If you can keep your Musketeers equal level or higher level than your opponent's fireballs, then you can run this deck pretty successfully. But these cards, right, very easy to request, and you've got, again, another clear strategy for what you're going to request. You're going to keep requesting 3 Musketeers and get them to the highest level that you can, right? So unless you get lucky, I feel, and like me, you open up a really good legendary that can form the basis of a deck and propel you all the way to 3K and above, you probably want to be going with one of these other strategies. And these are sort of the strategies that I play around with, or one similar to this, when I'm not just climbing with this Lava Loon deck. So there's my advice. Again, to kind of summarize, I think that Clash Royale is a very interesting game. I really like the mechanic of playing in real time simultaneously. It makes for very fast and fun gameplay. I think it's really a unique sort of iteration on the design space. It's available to collectible card games. It is very much pay to win, though, and this can be frustrating. But if you know how to progress, it isn't as much of a bother, right? And if you get a little bit lucky, like I have, you can have a deck like this, which is just very, very successful. This is a top tier deck basically, and isn't that far down on levels because I've been able to get these cards. Even if you don't, if you play something that is designed to level up well, that is going to be very easy to level up, like a deck that has 7 commons, 1 rare, or a deck that has 3 rares, 5 commons, something like this. There are a few decks out there that will allow you to keep up in levels with your opponents and climb faster. It's very important that you understand how these levels work, right? And why this is a successful strategy. You want to understand the equivalency of levels between cards. That way, for whatever scenario you end up in, you understand what your most powerful cards are and roughly an idea of how you want to build a deck around them. But it is important that you climb as quickly as possible, right? Going from Arena 1 to Arena 4 doubles your income. Going from Arena 1 to Arena 10 quadruples your income. And you want to also level up to level 3 and level 8 as quickly as possible. Again, levels and arena levels are distinct things, right? The arena that you in is sort of your matchmaking rating. Your level is sort of an aggregation of all the level ups that you've done for all your cards and all the achievements that you've gotten, right? And it determines the strength of your towers. You want to level up your towers basically to level 3 and 8 as quickly as possible. 3 because it gives you access to a clan where you can start. Here I donate a card, I get 10 experience, 50 gold. Here I'll donate some minions. I can donate up to 8 commons per go. And you see I got 5 gold and an experience for each one of them. Pretty easy peasy. Level 3 is what gets you access to this clan. Level 8 is what gets you access to these free challenges, which will also really boost your income. Getting to Arena 10 is also very nice, because Arena 10 in particular allows you to buy from the shop legendaries. Even if you aren't able to buy legendaries from the shop, though, you should be every 24 hours buying the first 2 copies of every common and rare that you come across. And also just be careful in terms of how you're spending your gold to level up your cards. If you're not using a card, don't level it up. If you are using a card, level it up if possible. So for example, in my climbing deck, every card that I play is leveled up as high as it will go, right? But you know, in a deck where like I'm just kind of testing it out, I might not have all the same levels, right? And this isn't really the deck that I've been testing out, but this is just an example of something that you could be doing when you kind of already are guaranteed through another deck that you're going to be able to climb to whatever arena level you want to be at. So buy the first 2 copies of commons and rares from the shop. Buy epics if you don't have them and you're early on, because having a level 6 card it will be very important. Understand the deck archetypes. Try and lean towards a deck that's closer to a siege or control archetype, using either a hog rider or a siege weapon to deal your damage, and try and avoid fighting where your opponent has the defender's advantage, because your levels are going to matter a lot when you're in that scenario, and they matter a lot less when you're able to react to what your opponent's doing and play counter cards to what they're doing. Understanding the counters is going to be a lot more important than whatever levels and raw stats that your cards have. And that's basically it. I really don't think there's been a lot of videos like this on YouTube explaining for new players how to progress in this very much pay-to-win game. But I think that, again, just after a couple months of effort, it doesn't really take that much. You can get to Arena 10, and then you don't even need to be playing regularly to progress, right? Just opening the free chest, getting the clan donations, right? Occasionally doing challenges and stuff like that will be enough to kind of get you to the levels that you want. So, there you have it. Now, let's open the super magical chest for the grand finale. What do I get in my super magical chest? 4,788 gold. Nice. Poison. This is the first poison that I've ever gotten. Pretty nice. Bunch of cannons. Not going to use any of those. Bunch of mortars. I could use those. Musketeer. Pretty solid card. Dart Goblin. Also a decent card. Underrated. Not played very much. Executioner. This card is fantastic. This card is probably one of the best epics in the game, honestly. Certainly in the current meta, it's one of the best epics in the game, so I'm really happy about that. And then finally, hey, a second miner. That's pretty sweet. So there we go. Second copy of the miner, so I could level this up to level 10. One of the best epics in the game. Two pretty solid rares. A garbage common, a really good common. My first poison, and almost as much as 5k gold. 4,788. Not bad, not bad. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Unlocked my first poison. Not bad. Alright, that'll wrap it up. Hope this helps for those of you out there who are struggling to progress in the game, or maybe just getting started. Yeah, I think I've covered everything. Alright, have a nice day.